everybody. Dia Davidson here. And, with the recent cases of police brutality ending with the deaths of African American men and women all across our nation, we find ourselves staring into the eye of a very difficult subject, and that's the discussion of race. So joining me now to talk about the meaning of being Black and male in America is Mario Radford. He is a pastor and a motivational figure in our community. Mario, it's always good to see you.
It's always good to see you and to connect with you always.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, let's get right to it. When you think about the subject of race, what does it mean to you?
I think race is often used to describe us in categories. It is how we sometimes define each other to say that it's my Black friend or my white friend, or of course, it is what is used to define the human race, humankind, mankind. It's hard for us to even describe mankind without saying race. But I think it is the thing that we use to define us, to categorize us, and oftentimes separate us. When I think of race, that it is not just something that is used in united terms. Sometimes they're used in divisitory terms to divide us, that group of people, that particular as far as race.
All right. But then how do you see yourself as a Black man here in America?
When I see myself as a Black man, I see myself often, I would love to say accepted, but I can't often say that. I often, as a Black man, I see ourselves as marginalized. Often we are often the ones that are working harder than others. So when I see myself, even when I was graduating class, there was probably 300 or so in my class, but there was probably only 3 or 5 of us. And when we had our 3 or 5 African Americans, and when we had our reunion, our 20-year reunion, I remember a lot of them saying, "I remember you." And I wanted to respond and say, "But I don't remember you," only because we were the minority there, until I went to HBCU, Historically Black College, and I saw more that looked like me. Then I began to understand what it meant to even be me, because I don't know if I grew up just having conversations about you're a Black man or this is what it means to be a Black man. I just think we just were who we were.
Was it
Who I am.
empowering? Was it empowering going to an
It was
HBCU?
it was very empowering because there was a lot of my culture that I didn't understand. Actually, even when I moved to Mississippi for a while, it was even an extension of that experience, because there's something about the Southern culture that I was able to experience that I just hadn't seen before. So yes, there was an experience there. Just to football games were an event, basketball
Band.
games were an event. Yeah, the band, to see the experience. It wasn't just an event, it was an experience, and a celebration of who we were. Like, we were not to be educated and Black was the thing. It wasn't something to be frowned upon. It was to celebrate it, celebrate, to grow, and to appreciate your heritage and where we came from.
And to be inspired by the history of social protest that has happened throughout the ages. And so let's talk about the protests that are going on now. You're a pastor. You influence a lot of young people, and we see a lot of young people who are getting out, and they're wanting to show both Black, white, brown, coming together to say, hey, this enough is enough. What's kind of your spin on what's happening with the protests now? Do you think they are being effective?
I believe that they're being effective. I believe that people are at a state of being tired, of being sick and tired. That yes, we used to have the time where the faces of the movement were just a few selected people, whether that be Martin Luther King or Andrew Young, or those that were in the front. Now we see the frontliners are not just one person. It's people that are joined together saying we need to do this together. There's different types of movements that are starting all around the world, and not just in one state. It's not just one leader coming to every state to rally everyone around, but everyone is coming together. And I believe that it's as protest goes, it's not just about marching in the streets. but it's about getting a desired end, a desired result. And they are going to continue to march and continue to do that peacefully until they see some types of results. And I'm really excited to see the different things. And I applaud all of those who are doing what they do. And a lot of times, as pastors, we might not always be there physically, but we're there as far as the ones who are either counseling them or calling them or rallying and saying, "Hey, calm down just a little bit."
Mhm.
You know, so we're really excited to see that there's a group of people who are saying, "We're not waiting on you. We're going to go out and do what we need to do, not to disturb your peace, but maybe to disturb your comfort, to be able to say there's something we need to do, and it's time for all of us to wake up and do something."
And have this very, very raw conversation, because it's a raw conversation for
Yes.
all sides involved. Have you had a similar experience ever in your life, like what we've seen the images, and I think it was just very raw and surreal to watch the life breath, if you will, leave George Floyd's body. Have you ever had or known of anyone who has had a similar experience or one of those "I can't breathe" moments?
I have not had an experience directly associated with it. Um, I'm grateful that I haven't had anybody in my family that has actually experienced it. Being when I lived in the deeper South, I would experience times where if I got pulled over or there was sometimes they would do barricades or blocks where they would check IDs.
Right.
And sometimes we would run into an officer that you could tell was blatantly racist based on the approach that they would take. Sometimes they would come to the car, and when you roll down the force that would be used would give me an alert that I need to be very, very careful how I responded, be very, very aware of how I position my hands or any of those types of things. And so those times where I felt reminded that if I made a wrong move, this could go a different way. But I never experienced something that, you know, I think was journal ready, where I said, "This is the night that changed everything." But I have experienced different forms in that, not just even the police, but even I remember one time when I was in Mississippi, and I remember coming out of a grocery store and I was helping an elderly white couple, and I remember helping them to their car. And the guy responded to me. He said, "You know what?" He said, "You're one of the good coloreds." And I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "There's bad coloreds and there are good ones." He said, "There's ones who don't mean good, but you're one of the good ones." And I could tell that in the deep South, he thought that he was giving me a compliment.
Right.
But according to his way of upbringing, I'm an older white man. He felt that that's how he was supposed to talk to me. And I had to walk off and say, "I'm in a different place. I'm in
Yeah.
a different town." So that was jarring when I experienced that.
But you talk about the positioning of your hands and the sensation that you get when you see those blue lights. And I think we all share the fear of when we see the blue lights flashing. But it's a different type of feel, isn't it?
It is because and I'm not a police officer, but what I don't think some understand, because a lot of times when we're being stopped, we're sometimes being stopped by white officers or someone of a different particular background. As African American people, we are visible. We move our hands, we talk, we move our bodies. They are oftentimes taught those are signs of defense, to look, they must be hiding something, there's doing something. So any movement of any kind, when we talk to our hands, we're like, "What do you mean?" They think that we're getting ready to retaliate, and it's not always the case. So that it is a jarring, because for us to put our hands a certain way and to be still goes against our very nature, because we are expressive as a people. That's how we are. So it does put a different place, and it is a fear that is very difficult to explain and to define when it comes to that.
But we as parents and we as people of color in America, we've had our parents give us that talk.
Yes.
Do you remember the talk that you received, and have you shared that talk with your family?
Yeah, my parents have had a talk with us when I don't remember the age, but I remember having the talk, and then I've had the talk multiple times with my children. I have two adult children. My daughter is she's in Atlanta, And then I have a middle son who's in college here in Kentucky. And then I have a 13-year-old, and I've had to have that conversation with them. And it's a sad conversation to have that we in 2020 still have to say that every time my son goes out, because he's free to go out as he wants to because he's 20 something, but at certain times in the night I am wondering and making sure that nothing has happened. I remember times that he has called and said he got pulled over, and I'm like, I'm staying on the phone until and that's a sad thing that I have to experience. And even when the Ahmaud Marbury situation happened, I run every single day. And I think before that happened, not that I was not aware of it, but before that, I wasn't as cautious as I am now. Now that I run, I'm always thinking, I'm always aware of my surroundings. I'm always looking. I have my phone in my right hand just in case I need to dial someone really quickly. And it's a sad thing to not really to even work out or to run in the neighborhood and think that everyone in that community has your best interest in heart, as the guy was running and others have ran. It's not just him. There's many other countless names of people who have experienced that we don't even know that it's hit the news. So I've had that conversation with my children. I hate that I've had to have that conversation. Even my daughter in Atlanta, not even if she was closer, I couldn't do anything, but still just the thought of it. And that guy was in Atlanta who experienced that in Georgia. So it is something that we live with and carry at all times as parents, thinking about your children and not wanting to get that call that something went wrong.
Are you angry? Does it make you angry? And do you sense that when we see the very expressive and very vocal protests, not the violence, but the very vocal and very impassioned, that it's just fatigue, anger, wanting to be heard, wanting to be seen, wanting to be respected?
It's an unrest that there is no language for. I wrestle with what to say about it. I wrestle with what not to say about it. Even as a leader, I wrestle with what to post, what not to post, what to share, what not to share. Because when you, I have always had, it's, I'm gonna say this real quick. It's like something that sits right in your throat.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know. To cry about it is to cry and to say, does it change if I cry? To hit something is if I hit something, will that change?
Right.
It's that I wish my grandparents were here sometimes to
Yes.
be able to ask them,
Yes.
what did you do? How did that feel? Those are the things that so I have two grandparents left, but some of them who have gone on, I think about that. What was that like? What did you do? How did you experience this? How did you drive? Did it cause you anxiety, or are you nervous all the time? Because those are all the feelings that I have now often, where everyone is highly sensitive, and it's not sensitive for wrong, but it's just, it's like you don't know what to do exactly. And for some of us, if you push us against the wall too many times, we're going to come back fighting, and it's that type of,
As would anyone
yeah,
who's had
yeah.
enough.
So you're trying to restrain and try to release in how can we make a difference, because you don't want to marginalize and group everybody, because there's a group of people, even white, who are really asking, what can we do and what do we do? So we don't want to group everybody together to say everybody's against us. But when you've been in a world that seems like they're always against you, you sometimes have that anger of when someone, it's almost like when you've been in an abusive relationship and someone tries to hug you, like, wait, what do you want? And they're just trying to hug and embrace. So there's all different types of emotions that I'm probably not even doing justice to be able to adequately describe. So I don't know if anger, I don't even know if that's just the word. I don't know what the word is.
Right. And trying to do this under the cloak of our brownness and being not labeled as an angry Black woman or a disgruntled Black man or any of the stereotypical labels.
Or angry without cause.
And angry without cause.
you know
Exactly. what do you want people, everybody, to take away from this discussion that we're now starting to have about race and about protest and social protest? What do you want people to walk away with?
I want us to walk away with that it's not just going to take one person, or um, it's a conversation that you continue to have, that it's not going to be, let me post up my black friend and let me show you that I do like all people. It's not that. It's do you know what it's like to be me? Conversations. And do you know what it feels like to walk into a store and people follow you? Do you know what it's like to walk past a particular different white person and they grab their purse? Do you know what that feels like? To be able to have that conversation, not in anger, but in understanding. And ultimately, I've aged myself by even quoting the movie, but the movie Brewster plays, where at the ending of the movie, where she had just gotten tired of,
Oprah.
yeah, Oprah, she got tired of just going through all of that stuff. And in the midst of the rain, I think somebody had just gotten hurt, and she took a brick. She kept chipping at it until she took one brick, and they watched her at first, like, what is she doing? And then each one with tears in their eyes and the pain, and I feel that pain even now, the pain, they all came to that wall and they all kept grabbing a brick, and they kept grabbing a brick, and they didn't stop until they saw a peak on what was on the other side of that wall. And I think that that's what it takes right now. It's not you don't have the authority to say this on this conversation. And it's no, come to the wall. Come with your tears, come with your hurt, come with your stories, come with your lack of understanding, but you've got to grab your own piece, because we got to grab our own piece, and we got to chip away at this thing one conversation at a time until we see a peak. And until we see a peak in that other side of the wall, we got to keep standing this spring. We're going to have to cry a little bit longer, but eventually there's going to be joy.
Yeah, because joy comes in the morning, right, Pastor?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Talking about that, Sunday,
Yeah.
God's day, the most segregated day of the week, where we all go to our corners, mostly. Some churches are integrating, have integrated, some more rapidly than others. Why? We talk about all of this, but why is it that we talk about the white Baptist church and the black Baptist church, or the black Methodist church and the white Methodist church? Why do we still, on Sunday, the day that we're supposed to be reflecting heaven?
Yeah, well, I believe it's we're creatures of habit. It takes us a while to undo what has been passed down to us. For many of us, according to the history of a lot of us, we were only allowed to worship in the fields. So the white community often had the building, and we had to go somewhere else. And then we built our own different things. And then when we did, sometimes there was only one person who could read. And then a lot of times what they did read was what was told to them that they could read. So there was a lot of oppression that was constantly headed down to us. So I believe that, and then later on, moving into civil rights, that was also the meeting ground for many people, and a spot that they could share information without wondering if it was going to be leaked. I believe that sometimes, and even though my particular church, our church is diverse, and I'm grateful for that, and we intentionally are in that direction, but there are a lot of people that when you start talking about brutality, you start talking about being marginalized, you talk about racism, we are sometimes, as African Americans, as Black brothers and sisters, we're oftentimes walking down the streets with a target on our back all the time, always being ask questions with something, or you look like you're from this gang or whatever. So when we come to some of them who come to their predominantly Black churches, it's the one place that they're like, I can relax and not wonder if anybody's going to say anything to me for my expression. So I believe, and then for some in the particularly all white community, they feel like sometimes topics of race and things are political issues. For us, they're not political issues; they're life issues, and we serve and worship a God of justice, and one who helps the marginalized and the oppressed. For some other churches, often it's like, well, that's for somebody else to do. So I believe that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that, but I believe those things also come with relationship. Like sometimes we have our unity services and things, and that's great. And I'm not saying it's not good and effective, but if we do these things and there's no relationship aspect for it, then all we did was come together like coming to a baseball game.
Right.
And there was nothing that came out of that.
Today marks the 5th anniversary of the shooting at Mother Bethel Emmanuel Church in Charleston by Dylan Roof. They lost members during that Bible study. Their pastor, Clement Pinckney, was killed, along with others. Yet, even though the face of evil walked into that church and was embraced as another human being, each person, each family, each spouse, each loved one, each child, when they addressed this individual in court, offered forgiveness. How is that possible, Pastor? How is that if my loved one is mowed down in a hateful because of hate? That's a tough one. That's a tough one to find the ability to forgive.
Forgiveness is the act of being able to let go without controlling the result.
Right.
And a lot of us, we say we want to forgive, but we want to determine the outcome of it or determine what happens to the person who inflicted hurt. To be at a place of forgiveness for all of the many different years of oppression and the different things that we've experienced, like that situation, which I cannot imagine, had to come from a spot of, reminds me of the movie The Shack.
Yeah.
And there was a part in The Shack where his daughter had been killed. And the God came in the form of an Asian guy, but he came and he was mad and he said, "I want you to forgive him." And he said, "I can't forgive him. He deserves punishment. He deserves whatever." He said, "But he's also a soul that I want to redeem. He still belongs to me." That's a place of deep maturity and an understanding of God's love to be able to get to that point. And a lot of us feel like love is weakness. For me to love you, me to forgive you means that I'm letting you go free. I'm not letting you go free. I am saying that you're going to be in the hands of God.
Right.
And he can do more with you than I could ever do. So, but
Because what does it say in the Bible? What is it in the book of Job? Do you have an arm like God? Yeah. No. Yeah.
So I believe that that's a spot up, because a lot of us, I want to forgive them, but I also want to see vengeance gotten on them as well. That's not forgiveness. That's manipulative control. To really have forgiveness is to say, I release it, whatever happens with it. I want to be on the side of helping and to bring the type of justice, but I cannot, for those people who have been shot recently, and those that Breonna Taylor and all the ones that have been experiencing, we want justice. And sometimes we want to define what justice looks like. But I can't, to forgive, to be able to say, I can't allow this to sit in me. I can't allow this to breed into hatred and bitterness, and then to allow that to be expressive in the community. I can't. We have to let's turn this hate, let's turn this into a movement that can bring change for somebody else's child, even if it wasn't mine.
Are you concerned that this is just a moment, or is it really a movement?
I pray deeply that these are not just great photo shoots, and that they're not just great sound bites for television, because the movements that were created in the 60s, I don't think that they staged sit-ins just to make the news. I don't think that they wanted to be hosed down. I don't think that they wanted dogs sicked on them just to go back and talk about it and put it on Snapchat if they did have that at that time. I believe it was about their families. I believe it was about their communities. I don't think Dr. Martin Luther King thought that the dream was going to be still talked about then, now. So I really do pray that this movement and this has happened, this moment that has happened, that all of us are watching and zoomed in on, because I mean, we're still wearing masks and doing all these different things, but I really do pray that this moment is not just something that will not continue in November, not necessarily protesting, but that will say, hey, we cannot have a repeat of this. We cannot just put a band-aid on this. We cannot just slap someone's wrist and go on and pretend like it doesn't exist. We want there to be real justice in this world, and we want to be able to move forward. So I really do pray that the people commit, like the Black Lives Matter movement that happened many years ago. I mean, it wasn't nearly as big as it is now, because it just keeps growing. By the time we print out one T-shirt of one person, we got to print out another one because we're adding somebody else's name. By the time we have one visual, we're creating another visual to be able to speak somebody else's name. So this is not something that can stop. This is something that will continue. And I hope it doesn't just continue in protest. But I pray that it continues for people, some of our teenagers and some of our young people getting elected into office, and that they'll become the next leaders, that they'll become governors, that they'll become presidents, and they'll be able to say, I became this because of what I did not see. I looked at that and I said, I will not allow another generation to do this. I became a part of the change. I hope that's the protest. May it go to Washington, that people will be able to say, I saw that my sister was the one who was shot. And I said, I won't stop until this is changed. So that's what I hope comes from this.
And voting, getting out and using that
Yes.
right that so many people died for.
Yes.
That is the way to make transformative change. Okay, so what's the next step? Where do we go from here? We're going to vote. We're going to still mobilize. But how are we going to keep the conversation moving forward, especially since everybody is seeming to want to be divided now when we talk about defunding the police? That's the term they use, but really it's restructuring the police department, right?
Yeah. And even with that, it's an inward change that happens before we talk about what all needs to change inwardly in the policing. There's an inward thing that has to change within their system. There are things that have happened way before some of our Black and brown brothers were able to, or sisters were able to even put on uniforms. It was a system that was already created. So many of them are trying within to fix something that's been going on for a long time. It's going to take a lot of patience. A lot of constant meeting and changing and revisiting a system that predates many of us, that has gone on for a long time. And when you start poking a line, you're going to expect to be bit in some ways. So I believe that it's going to be a continual process of conversations and legislative things that will have to change in order for the policing or for laws. I mean, because there are laws that are protecting some of the different things that we're seeing in some of the policing. So it's bigger than the uniforms. We have to go much deeper and to start knocking on some graves of some people who have slept, right now, to be able to do that. So it's going to take a while. And those of us protesting and being loud, we're going to equally have to be okay with it taking a while, and be okay with the journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 mile. I mean, begins with one step, to be able to start making one step at a time.
All right. Mario, thank you so very, very much for sharing your thoughts and your insight. Keep the music going, keep the word going, because music, again, transformative. We look back and we see Reverend Al Green,
Yes.
the change coming, and of course Marvin Gaye. All of the words still relevant today.
Yes. Yeah.
Until next time, friend. And thank you guys for joining us for this conversation. And we'll have much more from some other community leaders as we discuss race in America.